Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that you have shared about my upcoming webinar that's next week on Thursday about how to get clients from your podcast and make sure that your show is actually working for you. You shared that with with your audience, so I appreciate that, and I want to share all about you with
Thank you.
anyone who follows me. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
absolutely. Well, you and I met at FinCon, which I'm wearing an awesome FinCon t-shirt right here. So, but you're wearing your brand t-shirt, so that's even
Yes.
better. And you are a CPA, but you've
Mhm.
really leaned into this tax strategy niche for yourself. And you've been talking a lot in all your posts and on social media about helping moms get a tax break, mom business owners, of course, by employing their children. So, talk to us about that. How's that work? How do you help us work through that?
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I credit FinCon with, getting me started. I met a podcaster for moms, and she said, "Hey, my moms want to know, all of my moms want to know how they can set up a Roth IRA for their child. And no one seems to be able to figure this out in my world." And I said, "Oh, I know exactly how to do it." And thankfully she had me on her podcast, and I have continued to learn and educate myself and test this strategy with other with moms. And essentially it is a very unique, not necessarily a loophole. Loopholes aren't not favorably looked at, but IRS has, a case has gone to IRS court, and IRS has basically authorized parents who own the business to hire their child as young as age 7 to be a bona fide employee in their business. And the wages that the children get paid from their parents open the door for the Roth IRA. The only way you can have a Roth IRA, you can actually make a contribution to a Roth IRA, is to have earned income. And the highest level of earned income, the easiest way to show that earned income exists is by being a W-2 employee. And for the most part, moms and dads think of paid work only coming when the kids are 12 to 14 years old. But if they own the business themselves, without outside partners, they are allowed to start that at age 7. And by contributing the maximum amount, from age 7 to 17, a child can easily, invested in a good growth stock ETF, can end up with over $100,000 in their account by the time they go to college.
Yeah, which would really set them on a great path toward, you know, probably being better well off financially than many of the parents are at this point, even being business owners and even, having a background in corporate or whatever the situation is. So I think that's awesome because that is what a lot of us want for our kids is for them to be, you know, better, stronger, faster, smarter, more successful than us. Or at least that's my goal as a parent. So, this is awesome. So, talk to me a little bit about what the business owner may need to think about in consideration of, okay, yes, I want to set my kid up, but there are some things within the business that you have to set up to even be able to have your kid as a W 2 employee. One of those things being corporation versus LLC and some things like that. So we aren't giving tax advice here. Disclaimer, everyone. Penny would advise you individually on a one-on-one basis based on your specific situation, very likely through a paid, contractual agreement here. But
Mhm.
this being broad in general and, high level, don't take this as advice.
Mhm.
But Penny, if you could just give us an overview of what someone may need to consider as they're like, this sounds
Mhm.
awesome. I want to set up my kids.
Mhm. Yeah, the number one thing to look at is, if this is the right time for you to do this, is, do you have a tax bill? I mean, if your business is not, creating a situation where you owe more taxes than you would if you didn't have the business, um, then that is kind of the entry level for, hey, is this a good thing for me to go down? um, then the next thing is to look at, if you were to, does your business produce enough revenue versus your expenses where you have a gap to use that gap to pay your child? Because if you are just breaking even, number one, you're not going to have a tax bill from your business, and number two, your revenue and expenses are too close together, so you're not going to have the money to pay your child. And then the next one is, as Virginia mentioned, is this is significantly easier to do if you are an LLC or you're a partnership between parents, not partnership between you and your best friend. Oh, or even I'm actually just a doing business as, I'm a sole proprietorship. I don't have a LLC at this time. It's significantly easier to do that than to try to do this within a more complex, business structure or tax structure, which is the S corporation. S corporations can do this strategy, but there are additional things that they need to do. And again, those things are better off covered, on a one-to-one situation with me or somebody like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Um, so, talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the top questions you get as you've been on stage, you've been on podcasts speaking about this tax saving strategy. Of course, yes, you have to be, you know, making that gap in revenue, like you said, where you've got extra and you're thinking, yeah, my kids could clean the office for me or like organize files or do these different things that they don't need a degree to be able to do. And that would still help me out in my business. But I'm sure lots of moms raise their hands and ask a handful of top three questions. What
Mhm.
are those, feedback items that you're getting?
Well, and the first one is, it comes up all the time, and I try to cover it sooner, is the age. Because if I start talking about this and for whatever reason I don't get to the point where it's almost like the first thing I have to say is that it's age 7, because that is the thing that I think, is it true that, what is the age? And the answer is 7. And is it really true? And it is absolutely true. And so that, if you're not, if somebody comes to me and their child is 6, I will say, hey, now's a great time to start looking at things. And then the next most often asked question is, what actually do I have them do? Whereas, in you're asking the question, you're saying, oh, my child could do this, my child could do this. Quite often I'll get moms come to me and say, what do I have them do? And in that case, I walk them through a strategy where they look at what they are actually doing, as they're doing things in their business, and decide, is that something someone else could do, or is this something, one of the examples I use when I talk to people, it, am I organizing photos? Do I have a a drive, full of disorganized photos that, they're going to be able to move around faster, even at age 8, than I can, you know, as an adult? Or is it developing, a Facebook ad strategy? Your child is, probably not going to, you know, be ready to figure out your ad strategy, but they're going to be able to, move images around, and do research and that kind of thing. So what I like to do, instead of saying, these are all the things that your child could do, I like to turn it around and say, you look at things that you are actually doing, and then decide, because that's part of what IRS is going to look for when, if for any reason they were to evaluate, their first thought is going to be that you're not really employing your child, that you're paying your child to get the tax benefit, but you're not really having them do something. And so developing a job description is, very beneficial, and it's definitely something that you need to do. And developing that job description based on things that actually need to happen in your business is going to be the best type of job description that you can do. And then the third question is that, I get this mostly from dads when I talk about it. And it is, you say that I need to actually put my child on payroll so that they can get a W-2, and the W-2 is what gets that, makes it easiest for your investment, your ETF company, to believe that your child really did work. Is it really, really, really necessary for me to go to the trouble of putting my child on payroll? And I say, wouldn't you rather just put your child on payroll and pay your child all year long? And then when your child has a W-2 and you go to whatever investment house you use, that you already have the W-2, rather than go through an entire year of paying your child and then try to open the Roth and not have the W-2? Well, wouldn't you rather set it up for success?
Yeah.
And, it's too often small business owners who aren't on payroll themselves, don't have any employees on payroll, think that payroll is difficult to do, and it's not necessary that it's difficult. That, I recommend a payroll service that is specifically designed for small business owners to set up one person on payroll easily, and they even have a setting to say that this is a family member.
Oh, cool. That's really helpful. Well, and speaking of that, don't you have a smart start checklist or something
Yeah,
like that that helps give
yeah,
us those clues on what's the payroll service provider? Like, what are
yeah,
some of
yeah.
those? Where can we find that, or what's that called? Did I say the name right?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's a smart start checklist. And it's on my website, and I've given my website address to Virginia, so she'll
Mm-hmm.
share that with you.
Yes, I
But
will.
on that page, on my website, there's, click here to get the checklist. You can look through, there's other links on there. You can even book a 15-minute call to I have a quick call to see if this is the right thing based on your own situation. I have a longer call, a paid call that you could set up for if you know it's the right thing for you,
Mm-hmm.
but you need more guidance as to how to move forward. And on that website, I also have two or three links. What the number one thing is that you need to have a business bank account. If you are running your business through your own personal account, having your business bank account is a required part of the strategy. And on my website, I have a link to an affiliate link to a place where you can get a really easy to use business bank account.
Yeah.
And then there's a link to having to the payroll service that I mentioned, affiliate link for that. And then the third part of the strategy is that the money needs to go from your business bank account through this payroll service into an account in your child's name. And so I don't have an affiliate link for this, but what I recommend for that is the Capital One Money teen account. And don't be fooled by the word teen. They
Mm.
will allow you to open an account for a child as young as age 7.
Okay. That was immediately my question. You read my mind. I was like, but they're 7. How do we do this?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. That's really, really helpful. So, some general business basics there about separating your personal finances from your business finances. I heard that. Really good advice for business owners. I know that's a mistake that people make at the beginning. Or maybe you started your business and got down the road and it got bigger than you thought, faster than you thought, and you just never separated the funds. So, super important just from a general business best practices
Mm-hmm.
advice there. So, step one, make sure your finances are separated, and then you can start walking through Penny's steps, which is super, super helpful. I do have a question about, you mentioned having your kids as a W 2 employee. What would you say to people that have been looking at not having employees and having contractors? Like maybe you have other contractors that do work for you and you're thinking, well, yeah, I could set my kid up as a contractor. How do you feel about that? Or does that not work for this strategy at all? Or is that like a
Uh,
one-on-one advice thing?
I have an opinion on that,
Okay.
and um, if you are not concerned, if the point of your adopting this strategy is is not to get a Roth IRA for your child,
Mm,
you, you can feel fairly comfortable paying your child as a contractor.
gotcha.
But every conference I've gone to for the last year, I have either gone as a speaker or gone as a participant and spoken to every person I could speak to about hiring their children. Every mom that I've met that has paid their child and helped their child open a Roth IRA
Hmm.
has said that they needed a W-2.
Ah, very
So
cool.
I think if the goal, when I talk to people, there are two equal goals for this. One is to reduce your taxable income from your business, which
Hmm.
reduces the tax you pay, which you could do as a contractor, or getting the Roth IRA and funding a legacy for your child. You can do both, but to do both, I recommend, making sure that your child is on payroll and getting that W-2.
Yeah, really, really good clarity there. Thank you so much. And I want to ask one more question, kind of for me.
Sure.
It's interesting that in coordinating these lives and doing my webinar, every person, this is kind of funny, who has agreed to go live with me is a tax somebody, right? so so I don't know if that's because of my background because I did audit before jumping ship and jumping into the podcast space. But so last week I talked to Patrick Lonigan and he does tax strategy and investment strategies for business owners making $1 million or more in revenue a year. And then we've got Penny here, who is primarily focused on helping moms who own businesses, and whether that's getting things separated between personal and business finances, hiring their kids, creating some tax savings. But I'm wondering if there is a general income. Like Patrick was able to say, for a bunch of my strategies to work, they need to be bringing home $1 million or more. Do you
Mhm.
have like a range that your typical person falls into that you see and help and are able to make the biggest headway with?
So in in general, yes, but that's for my full service,
Oh, okay.
which my full service in would include it include all the strategies that are appropriate for a business owner, whereas and so really at a at a net income of about 100 to 125,000 just for the business, it would really pay off for you to start working with a tax strategist.
Mm-hmm.
um, but if you go specific just to this one particular strategy that we're talking about, it really has more to do with the gap between your revenue and your expenses. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the personal finance space, where we thrive and love to talk with people, you run into some business owners who have drank the personal finance Kool-Aid and are have almost no business expenses, and
Mm-hmm.
they have a lot of revenue, and they're successful in it, and they have almost no expenses. You could say have a a business that brings in $50,000 of revenue and has almost no expenses at all, and they could easily afford to hire their child.
Yeah.
So it's not a for this strategy, it's not so much a threshold as it is the balance between the revenue and expenses.
Yeah. And I believe there's a limit on how much you can pay your
Mhm.
underage child. Do you know that number
Without
offhand?
without causing any tax to the child,
Mm-hmm.
you can pay your child up to this year's standard deduction, which
Okay.
is $15,000.
Okay. Very good. So if you at least have a gap where you're
Mhm,
bringing home plenty, let's say,
mhm,
and your expenses are low enough where you at least have that gap, 7,000, 15,000, something like that, that you could hire and pay your child that amount of money, you wouldn't have to necessarily pay taxes on all of that because you'd create an expense for your
mhm.
business by paying your child. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said 7,000. And 7,000 isn't
I
it
just
it,
made up a
it
number.
no, that but 7,000 is the amount of the Roth IRA for 2025.
Awesome. Perfect. I
So
nailed it.
so and and actually I should have included this in the part where we talked about the top three questions,
Mhm.
because um one of the questions is, I may be talking to people who are not as fluent in personal finance as you and I are, and they may not be Roth IRA contributors themselves, and
Mm.
they don't realize that you have to actually pay your child
Mhm.
7,000 if you want your child to have a $7,000 contribution.
Right.
You can't pay your child 5,000 and then have them contribute the 7,000. They're only allowed to contribute. The maximum they can contribute is the maximum they earned.
Right, right. Good point. Good point there. I'm thinking back to like what you said. Generally, people are like, okay, well, what can my kid do in my business if they're 7 years old versus 12 years old? What are some ideas? And so I think some things I've had my kids do, of course, is clean the office. They know how to run a vacuum, they know how to sweep. Even if they're terrible at it, they can still do it and get paid and get the practice, because half of what we do as adults, we are quote unquote good at, like vacuuming. Like, how do you be good at vacuuming? Practice. You've done it for 20 years plus, right? So allow them to practice whatever skill it is. They have gone into my Google Drive and, like you said, organized files into folders. There was a specific client that I worked for a while where we had the files she provided and I needed to duplicate them into my folders in a very specific, organized way. And I wrote up instructions on how to do that, and the kids followed the instructions. And at that time, they were, I'm going to say 8 and 10. It was a couple years ago. Um, they can work Google better than I can half the time. So just a note to other business owners out there, don't be afraid to assign them something that you feel is technical or complicated. Um, Again, just allow a little bit of room for mistake, right? Because they do need to learn and get that practice in. And then, um, if it's something like cleaning or something, don't misunderstand that you may need to go and rewipe the window behind them, because there's definitely going to be streaks on the window. But hey, they did the job. They helped, they showed up, they're proud of their work. And a lot of times, them feeling proud of being helpful is worth more than the money and the tax savings. So there's that piece of it there too. So any
Oh, yeah.
any other ideas there, Penny, of like what they well, I forgot to mention my daughter is amazing at Canva. Any kind of thing like that. If you want to say, hey, listen, buddy, newsletter needs to go out every week. Here are some things that I typically put in my newsletter. Read these old newsletters so you get an idea of it. And then you're going to be in charge of coming in here every Wednesday and say, hey, mom, a newsletter needs to go out tomorrow. What are we doing in it? And just that prompt, is very helpful for him to sit down with me and brainstorm what's in the newsletter. How do we write that up? Okay, bud, get in ChatGPT, type in my profile, figure out what some language might be around these topics, get some ideas, and then help me flesh it out. He can do all kinds of stuff. My daughter can do all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
cool to see them grow. But is there anything else that you've seen other parents assign to their kids that seem to work well?
Yeah, I spoke with a mom who wasn't comfortable at all with technology.
Oh,
And, I mean, she's, you know, very young and yet just isn't comfortable with it, even though she's probably more a digital native than I am. And, she was she knew that she needed to be on Instagram in order to reach the audience that she was looking for.
mm,
And, she said to her daughter, do you know how to do this and this and this? And her daughter already was, could do it in her sleep. And so, whenever she goes live on Instagram, her daughter is with her, making, checking. I mean, you and I talked about that, on one platform. You said, I can't see if somebody's making comments, but if you were to have one of your children, live as a participant, they could send you a message, write it on a piece of paper and slip it in front of you and say, George asked, do I really need to put my child on payroll? And, that was one of the questions that we covered. And so there are so many things that you can do. And, I mean, we're not asking a surgeon
Right.
to, bring their 7-year-old child into the operating room or
Hmm.
into the emergency room and start taking the actions of the surgeon. We're doing things that, are, it may work, it may not work. And whether your child is involved in it or not, it's it's giving them a chance to be included
Yeah.
in what you're building.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yes, you reminded me. So what Penny and I had talked about before this was, as we go live through a third party provider and it gets pushed out to different platforms. So right now we are inside Riverside is the platform that I use. And this live is being broadcast automatically to my Facebook page and my YouTube page. Well, without me being in another window on YouTube and on Facebook, I can't see the comments or who's watching or how many people or anything until after this live. Me and Penny say bye, and I go and I jump over there and try to like respond to people real quick. But one of my kids could be not even on camera. Don't misunderstand. We're not saying you need to like have your kids on camera with you. There are some safety issues and things like that that we're trying to protect our kids from. But they could be off camera over here on at a different desk or on a laptop in the other room or whatever, and they could be on those platforms participating in the comments section as me or as Penny and like tag us or even like Penny said, hold up a piece of paper or something in my line of sight where I know who's asking what question. And that would be really helpful, especially if your business is a very, video based business and you're going live or you're doing presentations or let's say you're doing webinars and they can be in the webinar chat while you're up presenting and give you different signals based on what's going on. So anything like that, I mean, it doesn't mean your kid has to be front facing in the business. This is very like admin support style work that we're talking about. Social media is a great starting point where, hey, honey, there's 200 pictures in my phone. Go through and see which ones you think are cute, are funny, are whatever, and we can develop out a content calendar. There's so many things that you can involve them in and pay them and set them
Mm-hmm.
up for a wealthy future. So I love that so much. And real quick before we go, Penny, you did allude to your overall services of your business, which from
Mm-hmm.
the top I said you're a CPA. You do lean into this tax strategy point, but you also offer general services that a CPA would offer to small business owners. So could you
Mm-hmm.
give us a high level overview of how we can work with you and what would be a need that we would come to you with?
So I have. Thank you so much for setting that up. And my website that Virginia has is the best way to get in touch with me to move forward if you were to have questions. And you know, I even meet with people. I have like a 1 hour paid strategy session where I'll get people who say, I feel like I paid too much taxes. Can you review a tax return that somebody else prepared? And then, if I review it and I say, oh God, good goodness, your person, I got all excited when I think about, somebody missed something on somebody's tax return. And ultimately, that person may enjoy working with me to the point where they not only want me to help them correct a problem that somebody else missed, and then, if they have bookkeeping, I don't actually do bookkeeping, but I'm happy to review bookkeeping that somebody else does. If they have somebody else doing their bookkeeping, I can, do oversight of that. If you do it yourself, I can have over.
Uh-oh. Looks like we froze there. Just a sec. See if the internet will work itself out. Okay, let me send Penny a quick message, everybody. Hang tight. Okay, maybe Penny will hop back in. Y'all just hang out with me just a second. A little bit of what Penny was sharing was that, even if you have a CPA, or maybe you've been doing your taxes yourself through TurboTax or some program like that, and you're starting to think like, oh, this business is getting bigger than what I'm comfortable with when I'm doing my own taxes, and I want someone to review what I've done or what my other provider has done to make sure there's no tax savings options that maybe have been missed. Again, Penny is a tax strategist, and so she loves to dive in and notice something that where there's a gap, right? So whether it's this strategy of employing your kids, or whether it's a different strategy that she would tell you one on one based on your individual situation, she loves diving in and getting to do that. Oh, here she is. She is back.
My phone
Um,
got overheated. I apologize for that.
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I was just trying to like review real quickly, like, whether it's the employing your kids strategy, or if there's another strategy that you would notice from reviewing someone's tax returns. If that stuff gets you really excited and you
Yeah.
would love to just talk one on one with them and maybe share some other unique strategies. So, yeah, go ahead. Just continue your thing right where you left off.
Thank you. So, if it works out that they want to work with me, then I would, they could work with me at a regular basis. Their tax return and help them with strategies. What happens more often, like I'll get a mom who's interested in hiring her children, and then I will look at the level of income that she's getting from her business and realize that a retirement product tax strategy specifically for her and her employees is probably going to bring her tax bill down much more significantly than hiring her child. So hiring her child may be something that we do in the future, but initially getting that tax bill down by a completely different strategy may be the best place to start.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so good. Yeah, I'm just to have that extra third party just to look at what you've been doing. I'm sure you're doing everything fine. You're not going to trigger an audit or do something scary, but it's always great to just to have someone review it, especially someone who's used to looking at lots of people's books and seeing all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of scenarios, just
Mm-hmm.
to be able to review and um, you know, give you the thumbs up or say, hey, there might be something that we can do here. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much, Penny. I will hop on to the different platforms and drop your links there. So anybody who's watching, stay tuned for my reply to your comments, especially if you're looking for that website. and the Smart Start checklist from Penny. Thank you, Penny, for being on with me today. I appreciate it, and I'm so glad to see your face.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much. This
you.
is a great opportunity. Love talking
Yeah,
about this kind of stuff.
me
See you
too.
in September.
Yes, see you in September at FinCon. Woo woo! Here we go. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.